Get this here. Yes. Hello everyone, it is I, your host Mediafar, and I am here today with the continuation of what I was trying to tell you in the last video. I apologize. It was rather a bit. These things happen. But I have better lighting. I was in a different location at the time because, well, last time I told you that I was being chased for my life, and honestly, I couldn't really understand it. But I am here today with the translation of the script that I had last time, as I told you. And I hope this lighting is a lot better. I know the last time I was talking to all of you, it was rather a bit, it was I was a myth. But I am here with my little incense burner, no incense because it smells like art, and I have my these are actual candles, by the way, so you have to be very careful, but I am very safe about this. I have a whole process behind all of, what's going on here. The candles there, they provide a good ambient lighting. I have something on the other side, but you can't see it because the camera's out of focus, like always. But it's what I'm dealing with. I have this thing right here. I just hope I have, sufficient lighting for all of you to enjoy. But I am here again. Welcome everyone to another video. Welcome to another recording. It is I, your host, your Lord, your Master, Mediafile, and I am here to simply, talk to you. Give you sort of the developments of what happened in the last time. I remember I told you that I'm having a school for the hybrids. Recently we had a fallout with the original school that I was employed under. There was nothing really good going on. They wanted to host this contest, this sort of, rights of tourney for the hybrids that were going there. And I couldn't understand it. I couldn't believe it myself until I saw it. They didn't like my opinion. They kicked me out. And so I am here. But luckily with me and a few other favorable masters, we have decided to go to the Temple of Pahalu to open it up as a temporary school, a lodging for students. And for most specifically hybrids, because the hybrids were scared that they were going to be made to fight in order to qualify to receive, class. Because honestly, there was no funding for them, which was the greatest problem. They didn't really have any benefactors, no patrons. The teachers could, volunteer to be patrons, but that's not really here nor there. They have to be paid to work. So that is essentially what we are doing. But frankly, so after, a lot of consideration, a lot of, bartering, partnering, making deals with certain patrons, we have programs available for hybrids. Yes, if you are a hybrid, you do in fact qualify for these sort of things, these sort of, financial assistances. We do have those things available for all of you. And for other majors who perhaps don't like the way they did things at the previous school, we have that at your disposal as well. Just, come to the temple and we will set something up for a program that is hopefully beneficial to everyone. But on this channel, I want all of you to know, first and foremost, if you are visitors, hello visitors. And honestly, this is a time where we come here to be honest, to be ourselves, to speak, whatever is on our mind of, whether it's current events or perhaps stories of my past, which I can't really share with all of you at the moment, but it is something, it's nothing illegal, I assure you. No, it's honestly quite interesting. But before I get to this matter, and I have it translated, I was so happy. Honestly, I couldn't believe it. Like the fact that I showed you this, my special script, it is in fact real. You probably can't see it on the camera very well because, it is what it is. But first and foremost, I want to apologize for my incompetence last week. I felt like an utter jackass when I was giving you that information. But I have it right here with me, with what was translated. And believe it or not, do you remember this? Look, this. Do you remember? This is my first game. I showed you this many videos ago, but I found out that I had the translations. I had the cipher for this in here. So I'm going to share it with you now. I even wrote it down, a translated moment. But yes. So let me get to that page here just so that you know, the inner workings of how I do things. Everything is completely legitimate. It is field work, journalism at its finest. The quality of my handwriting is actually not bad. I was actually quoted in school for having the best penmanship. Thank you, mother, father. You are... You're doing a good job. So, anyways, here we go. So, per I was reading to you, the note says, the world of magic is one of endless possibilities. Those who practice it must do so with the utmost caution. It is imperative that one follows these specific guidelines to ensure the safety, progression, and understanding of the craft, of course. The rest is up to you entirely. The following pages are a compendium of knowledge, writings based on analysis, fieldwork, and discovery. Glory to Abalu, Pahalo be praised. That is what it said. That is what it is saying. And this is something that is very important to understand because, and I'll tell you why. Because when you have these sort of things right here, Bibles are the same manner. You have things like manuscripts, you have things like Qurans or whatever. All of these religious sort of scripts or texts are all sort of like these. They're sort of journals that document the things that they saw in the past, or perhaps even things that, they practiced, things that worked, things like using things like oils, incense, for example. Right there. Things like incense, all of these things. But of course, coming from my realm, we have specific uses and we have specific guidelines for all of these objects. So, for example, the reason why I have this incense burner here, this rather marvelous incense burner. Can you see the detail in this? It is absolutely marvelous. I absolutely love the blue color. It's very nice and reminiscent of a very significant circumstance. Well, a very significant type of thing. Anyway, I'm just rambling. I'm sorry. I'm very excited I have better lighting. No, even my location's a little bit better. I actually like this setup a lot better, actually. I had it over there. Too much things. I found an alligator in the dungeon. Apparently it was guarding a horde of, reserves that we had down here. But the alligator, it's been dealt with. No, Peter, do not kill it. It is simply it's in a better place. It's in a better place. No. It talks, yes, but no, it's very important because the thing about incense is, and it has a very significant circumstance, even in your realm, when it comes to things like incense, and I mentioned you a brief moment about that when I was explaining to you about my theory, about my observation of jinns, things that are known as genies or whatever, creatures, spirits, or, things in that circumstance. But when you have something like incense is significant in the fact that it is possibly one of the only substances that we can use that is able to traverse from our realm to the next one. When you're burning incense, some people do it as a type of offering, as a sort of, what do you call it? A peacekeeping between one individual and perhaps a spirit or something of another dimension. As you know, there are other dimensions, other realms where other sort of entities inhabit. However, not everything can be taken into those worlds because the makeup of those realms are entirely different from ours. The spirit realm, of course, everything is transparent or spiritual. Everything is affected on that level. When you come here in the corporeal world, we have things that are affected by, physical interaction. Things like, what you call chemistry or science. It is a similar circumstance in other realms, but more specifically in mostly in ours, but each realm is governed differently. The laws that govern each realm is different, as I've explained in previous videos. However, when it comes to things like incense, I'm trying to focus. I know I'm very, I'm all over the place. But when it comes to these sort of things here, I have like these little cones here for things like incense. It is important to understand that incense is one of few ways that you can sort of put something in the physical world into the spiritual one. And so we detect it as something aromatic. But essentially, the essence of what is being burned is essentially traversing our plane of existence into another one. And so when that occurs, the spirits, or perhaps whoever we're giving it to, is receiving that as a type of offering, or as I believe even a type of currency. We all know many types of currencies. I've explained it to you in a previous video. Things like blood, for example, rituals that were done in certain civilizations thousands of years ago, were things that were done as a method of payment, as a method of currency. The act of blood itself, it's very significant because, it has a lot of things like life energy, it has a lot of collection of mana. But when speaking specifically about incense, which you can use, it is sort of another method, a safer method, a more accepted method of, pushing the things into the other realm. But that is not the focus of this video. It's just a quick tirade. Check this out, look. It is magnificent. It is actually a, what do you call this thing? I don't know. It's a record something. I don't know. But it's a phonograph. That's what it is. But now, the bread and butter. So here, I mentioned to you earlier how I have a compendium of knowledge regarding many things that I studied while I was back home, abroad, in the magical realm. I was researching creatures, things like, medicinal purposes, potions, whatever you call it. But what is very significant is about the creatures that perhaps used to exist or perhaps is thought of as mythology in your realm. And and the subject I'm going to talk about, I don't want anyone to get offended. If you're Hindu, Buddhist, or whatever, I'm going to talk about this purely from a understanding of what we encounter in my realm. In my realm, in my world, the things I've seen and the similarities between the two. Because as you know, I've mentioned many times before, the only reason why certain creatures exist in your realm is because mages from my realm came over, they opened up a rift, they sent creatures through, and aside from themselves being present within your realm, they also engage in certain acts or practices which we deem abominable. Things like splicing DNA with other creatures without the permission of whatever governs this place. And the whole reason why that becomes an issue later on, and a hybrid is not an attack on you, I'm simply stating facts. During that time, when it was done so in a way without proper supervision from the major authority, from the council. When they did this, they were a de facto, they were misfits. Let's say, for example, they were misfits of a particular caliber. Not like us, because we are awesome. We are rejects, sure. But what I want to say is that when they came over, they started, engaging in certain acts and certain practices that, perhaps aren't the best and aren't widely accepted, but they are things that did in fact happen thousands of years ago. A few of us, not me personally because I'm not that old, but we were sent over when we heard what happened, and we had to pretty much dispose of any evidence. That is why you see caricatures in ancient civilizations, hybrids of creatures or whatever. You're welcome, humanity. We saved your asses like we always do. So the proper, I believe, introduction to this video, or I believe the creature I'm going to talk about in today's video is in fact the Naga. Yes, the Naga. N-A-G-A for all of you. We pronounce it in our realm. A similar nature, though there are, synonyms for that word. But these are essentially creatures, and like I said again, this isn't something to offend anyone of a particular inclination. These are labeled as something as being mythological in nature, but the significance and I suppose the origins behind these creatures is quite fascinating. And I believe that you'll find it quite interesting. So the Naga. What is a Naga? Naga, please. Now, Naga, I'm coining that, by the way. Don't steal it from me. Naga is essentially what it is believed to be a sort of hybrid between a human and a serpent. Particularly, in most circumstances, a snake, but it can be attributed also to dragons. The Naga is believed to have been a deity of, not a deity, an entity of a divine inclination, a divine nature. We are aware that in the Asiatic countries or the cultures, they revere serpents with a sort of, adoration. Certainly where they came from, it is believed, and believe it or not, there's perhaps some sort of levity to the situation. So according to the belief systems, from what I've observed, from what I have researched, these were beings that were sent down from, I believe, Brahma or Dharma, one of those things. I can't really know for certain. And they were sent down as, guardians, as well as other people to, oversee certain things on earth. Many oftentimes they were, worshipped or adored by the people that were there. Were they of a particular evil inclination? It is not really typically shared in their history. Just because something is serpent-like or hybrid in nature doesn't mean it is inherently evil. What you do is perhaps more important, the intention behind the act and the creature itself. However, this may be a bit controversial. This might be a bit offensive to some, but I'm going to pretty much get into this after I give you the brief rundown. So the Naga inherently can assume either a completely human form or perhaps a more snake-like form or serpent form. The iconography you've probably seen on certain, Buddhist temples, mostly in South Asia, I believe, around Thailand or perhaps, even some places around India, because there is things like Hinduism involved and all these things. However, it is a very gilded, very pretty looking snake. It is inherently, it looks rather ferocious, but it is intended to. There are certain reasons why they sort of make these caricatures as ferocious as they are. But these sort of serpents or, these snakes or dragons, I'm not a complete expert. I'm simply telling you what I've observed. Okay? Don't crucify me for this. So you have these creatures. Some of them were in charge of, guarding whores. Sometimes they can be seen inhabiting things like trees or even rivers. So they mostly have an inclination to the sort of, elemental wells that are found within the earth itself. But these sort of creatures, they weren't really seen attacking people of any sort of kind. They were revered, they were respected for who they are, for what they were at the time, because they bore a sort of relationship to the divine. So when it comes to the Asiatic countries, or I believe even in the Middle East, the serpent itself is seen as a divine creature, something being sent from the heavens. Where this comes from, I'm not entirely certain, but, well, I have a few theories behind it. I probably should tell you. So, for example, for those of you who perhaps may not know too much about the Judeo-Christian religion, I believe, and its origins, but there might be some sort of, I don't know, maybe some overlap that might explain it. There's a lot to understand, a lot to undertake. But it's quite interesting where this sort of goes. So, for those of you who may not know, way far back, I believe in the ancient, according to their history, according to their belief system, they mention how, their deity, their God, the Judeo-Christian God, Abraham's God, sent forth a serpent from the sky, gilded in bronze. It was a gilded serpent. It was very pretty to look at, and this serpent was said to have healing properties. It was able to heal certain ailments, cure almost anything. Some people, again, attribute this to the basilisk, and then there's some sort of, similarities from what we see for the Naga. According to the text, it is said that this sort of creature was very, it was very large. It was propped up on a sort of, it could have been a pedestal, a stick, or staff of some kind, sort of elevated to a certain position. And it said that when the snake, gazed into your eyes or looked upon you to whatever, the grace of the Hebraic God would then fall upon the serpent, through the serpent, and into the person. So if you were sick or whatever, you were sort of healed by the interaction with the snake, as it were. However, the problem later came to be that the people started to revere the snake as it being a divine creature, as it being divine itself. And so that sort of, offended the God of the of the Jews during that time. And so the serpent was sort of, dealt with at the time. Now, I'm not too sure if this came before or after the whole Bible thing. I guess the belief that many different customs of people separated and then they took customs with them. I don't know. But there is sort of something in that which I find absolutely fascinating. Then we have the sort of text in the more Asiatic countries. They go back thousands of years. They talk about these things that came from the sky. You have something in sort of, Middle Eastern philosophy that sort of, confirms that. But what is rather interesting, and you probably say bullshit on it, and I'm going to have to make this a long video. But when I saw the caricatures of the Naga, it is rather fascinating. You would have this sort of serpent thing that is sort of revered in China, in these Buddhist and these Hinduistic cultures. They are very gilded. I mentioned it to you before. However, there are many caricatures of them, and even the humans having many heads on one body. Even humans having that certain. There were even things that showed humans having serpents in their hair when it came to things like the Naga. And then I was putting two and two together. You know where I'm going with this. So, and this proves that these were real creatures, believe it or not. You just went around that long ago, and we took care of them for you. You're welcome. So, when it came to the Naga, these sort of creatures, and this doesn't even go into what I was going to talk about. This is just happening right now. It's absolutely fascinating. Pahala be praised. So, do you remember I believe in Greek mythology, the Hydra? I forgot who birthed the Hydra or whatever, but the Hydra is traditionally known as a giant serpent with many heads. When you go towards the whole, I believe the Eastern mythology around Hinduism, Buddhism, you have this same creature, almost identical. The only difference is that it's very gilded and it has somewhat of a different purpose. In their belief custom, it is seen as a creature that is able to, bring safety. As long as you, keep safe the trees or whatever, you ask for permission, you revere it, you give it gifts. It is even capable of doing things, charitable acts. It has things like camouflage. It has magic or whatever. But the fact that it has a different sort of, I believe, a different sort of action in regards to the Roman, or I believe the, Greek mythology, it is sort of the antagonistic nature. It is sort of a different type of Naga. So what does this mean? It would mean that, look, all of these sort of regions are sort of shared, which means that that creature in particular inhabited that region of the world and further down South Asia, which is also believed to be where this large, this sort of goes into the whole deep hole thing, a large serpent lives in the water. And then when you go further up north, you have the Icelandic countries, and they talk about a giant world serpent, which could in fact be a naga, but I don't recall the naga being that large. However, it is rather interesting that these sort of cultures sort of interlope or sort of, twist around each other when you consider the different iconography they have in their temples or even in their mythology. It's absolutely fascinating. However, and this is where we get into the bread and butter, which might be a bit controversial, for those of you who perhaps have this sort of belief system. In my realm, we have the cult, and do you remember the people I told you about? The people that revere the dragons, the cult that sort of make them the pure ones, or example. It is a cult. So I will tell you this, and you might not like what I'm going to say about this. Surprise! It's one of these videos. I'm sorry, but honestly, this is what you came for. It's what you're getting. However, when it comes to this, so of the mages that sort of left your world thousands of years ago, that sort of escaped from mine, that made a rift open within this, a rift between our realms, and connected both of us together, and the animals and the creatures got through. What happened is that along those mages also came the cult that revered dragons of a particular kind. And some of them were even in that cult that did, the sort of experimentation. They believe that the dragons native to our realm, that they believe are inherently responsible for the creation of the entire world. Some even go as far back as the universe. I won't go that far, for obvious reasons. They believe that these sort of people, they sort of came together at the time with, slaves, because we did have slaves back then. And they had the idea that they wanted to create, I believe, the perfect specimen. And they revered the dragon in a perfect manner. It was a perfect beast, a hub of raw magical arcane energy. And they also believed that by combining this with a person, specifically a mage, you would have a being of ultimate power. A being that is not only a hub of magical and arcane energy, but a being that can pretty much exist and traverse between different planes. However, this sort of backfired, and I will tell you why. So when it came to the experimentation about this, they didn't take into consideration that perhaps by splicing the DNA or perhaps the blood of one creature of a particular type of inclination with that of a human being or perhaps a mage, it would create sort of a hybrid that would not only be sort of unpredictable, but dangerous to have, to say the least. It's incredibly rare that you have a hybrid that is aware of all the faculties. However, some of these practitioners were quite advanced in their practices and in their craft, and they were in fact able to, I believe, create a specimen with relative intelligence and with somewhat of their faculties intact when it came to the magical realm. The issue is that this sort of splayed out, and so when they were trying to, I believe, spice more DNA, have them mate with other humans, these sort of things happen. You have things like the Hydra, which were born from these sort of unions, but it wasn't created from a birth. It was pretty, okay, this is what they did. And I sort of explained this maybe in perhaps the first or second video I uploaded. That was months ago. But essentially, they create these pools, these sort of vats where they keep these creatures in. Because you know that a regular person or a creature within this realm wouldn't be able to give birth to them normally. They simply have to extract the DNA of both creatures and then find a sort of, what do you call it? I believe a sieve, or I believe a tank that is able to synthesize these two things together to hopefully make them into a creature that is, compatible enough where it can exist and, keep existing. However, they sort of created these pools. These pools had a lot of, had a lot of solvents in it. Things like potions were mixed in, and yes, the blood of these creatures that were put in there. They had to do things like rituals in order for the creature to come out. And look, I'm not going to get into the whole, theological debate. I'm not going into a whole, moral dilemma. These things happened back then. Was it legal? Technically. Given the fact that our leader was, a particular inclination, these sort of things happened back then. It was a new world. They were convinced that the world that you inhabited was empty. Some were doing examples. The spirits told them that there is a realm that is available, that they should go over to the other realm and perform these to sort of whatever. But like I said, you can't trust every spirit. You have to test them. And there's a whole thing about the dragons. The dragons were also involved. One or two came through. They did this whole thing, and then, they started creating things like griffins or whatever. Even Kabbalists somewhat. But Kabbalists are different. I love Kabbalists. They are rather nice creatures. They let you ride on them. It's rather nice that they let you fly through the air. If you get the one that flies, there are Kabbalists that can't fly. But that's besides the point. The point is that when they came over, these people were pretty much dragon worshippers. And so they wanted to have a human that would sort of transcend into the dragon realm. And so they sort of, did this thing together. They had a ritual in place. They had the dragon, I believe, on one side, I believe the essence of that dragon, and then they have one of their volunteers to come through. The process, believe it or not, took days to accomplish. It is not an easy task. You can't just do this overnight, and it doesn't just happen immediately. It takes hours and hours and days of concentration, of incanting, of chanting, all of these things. So these things take time. So at the end of the day, it was finally done. They melded together. However, the person, of course, had to be spliced with that. So what came out was a sort of hybrid, this sort of, serpent-like person. However, what I believe they did not take into account was the fact that when you splice two things together, the world has to sort of balance itself out. And so certain things that you wanted to have are perhaps taken out and other things are placed in. Because dragons are already hubs and powerful beings of magical energy, of arcane forces. Your realm here rules things differently. Magic, as well as mana, is substantially reduced. And so the effects that it has on the creatures that are brought over, as well as the mages that are spliced with these creatures, have drastically negative side effects. So not only were they not really divine, some of them were able to maintain enough of a form where they could, where that they were able to traverse the world and the realm around you. They were able to move around fine and freely. However, they were sterile. Like I said, these sort of things happen. They couldn't procreate with other species or other members of their species. They had to go through the ritual again, which took even more time. And the dragons, believe it or not, the magic that they were able to have, though was potent, wasn't anywhere near the level they had when they were in my realm, in the realm where they come from. So not only were they sort of null and void, but the dragons were then had to resort to hiding in nature to try and sort of absorb the mana they were able to find in nature, which is what you do have. But they had to remain there for a long time, which is why you have stories of dragons living for thousands of years in your realm, things of that nature, and how they grew to such tremendous size. They had to sort of adapt to the terrain that was available, and they had to sort of sit in these pools of mana for extended periods of time to not only sustain them, but to give them the power that they needed. Unfortunately, because the laws that govern your realm hampered the effects of mana that you're able to do entirely, they were nothing than overgrown lizards at the end of the day. The Naga were in fact the same. Some perhaps were able to have some sort of magic, healing to some capacity, provided you were able to give them a sort of offering in return, which sounds very familiar. Yes, like jinns, precisely. There are sort of overlaps in that sort of area, but they're not jinns. They are their own creatures. But unfortunately, through the sort of illegal and through the sort of immoral practice of splicing the things together, they sort of left a bit deformed. Over time, they became a lot more animalistic, and the blessings that they had, quote unquote, became things like curses. Then you had things, for example, in Greek mythology, like the Gorgons, which are these sort of serpent-like creatures or people, quote unquote. Medusa is perhaps a very valuable and a very important one, well known. But Medusa was in fact a Naga. But according to Roman mythology, she was made into a Naga by, I believe, the Roman gods or whatever. Whatever the gods were, apparently they had the power, the ability to turn a person into a sort of Naga. But some could say that perhaps these gods were probably mages from my realm that came over. They had some of their magical capacities in place, and they sort of adopted new identities. And so they created this whole pantheon. It is, I'm telling you, it's a conspiracy. It is an entire thing, but there is some level to credibility when you consider the information that I just gave you. You have the Naga from Eastern mythology, and then you have the Hydra and the Gorgons from, the Greek mythology, which some consider Western, but technically it is Western compared to the East, but it is East compared to us. It is global, it doesn't matter, but these are things that happen, things that exist. But that is sort of the origins of the Naga and how they sort of came here when you consider it. And the fact that you have places here that sort of resist these, that sort of revere these serpent-like entities, these people, it sort of makes you wonder, well, what was the world like back then? But it is absolutely astounding and absolutely fascinating. But that is essentially how it happened, according to my beliefs and research done from my realm. I'm telling you what happened, how these creatures came over, and it was a huge thing. And so some believe from my, it doesn't mean it happened. I'm just telling you what happened according to our history. They came over, they did these things. Of course, they were worshipping, lauded by, people of your country because they didn't have the capacity or the knowledge of performing things like magical acts. So when they saw them performed, they revered them as gods or divine creatures, that they came from the sky, which is probably where the rift came from. And so all of these things sort of coincide, but it's absolutely fascinating. But without further more delay, thank you so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. That is pretty much all I've had to tell you about Nagas. But I could probably go perhaps deeper, because the origins and I believe the beliefs behind these sort of creatures and these sort of hybrids sort of branch into other countries and into other cultures. But I thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If this is the channel perhaps you just stumble upon, hello! I implore all of you to please treat each other with kindness, respect. Please say hello to your reject brothers. Understand that I love you, that Pahalo loves you, and that we are here to, just have fun, have a laugh, and to also learn on occasion. I hope all of you are doing well. Please be sure to, hug your family members. And if you have a brother locked in a cage, make sure to leave him out once in a while, because the gases can be quite astounding. You don't want to be in the same room with a gassy sibling, especially when they're locked in a cage for 12 hours. But thank you so much for watching, for listening. And remember that on this channel and in this life, we seek to make the mundane magical. Goodbye.